Life derailed. The destiny ship sailed. Guess who chose the wrong pill? Hello, hello, hello. It's Sambuka, your empath, your creative empath. I'm here for all empaths who find themselves on the creative path and have been wondering what to do. This is the destination for you. And today I'm going to tackle the reason why I am doing jingles and little ditties and things like that. People are probably wondering, and it goes back to time. I may not look it, but I'm closer to 60 than I am 50. And a lot of time has passed. A lot of time has been lost in relationships. Of course, you know that if you're an empath, you're probably dealing with leaving a narcissistic relationship or coming out of a narcissistic relationship. And I have been around many narcissists. The reason why I said at the beginning 20 years is a long time and 40 years is longer still. I saw a video, I believe it was even yesterday, depends on when you watch this, but I saw a video where someone was talking about time passing. And she used the analogy of 20 years. And as she sat talking about this 20 years passing, being in a bad relationship, and now having to recover time, I thought about the fact that I was about to talk about this whole situation with me and why I now make myself do jingles on a daily basis. Because for me, it's 40 years that have passed. This year makes 40 years for me. When I was younger, I always sang in choirs, in school. When I was in high school, I actually had started doing music. I've been taking piano at home, doing private piano lessons, but I started doing music with a flute because they didn't have like pianos for everybody who could, was into piano. So I took the flute. And by the time I got to the latter grades, our music department had shrunk drastically. So I decided to do vocal because, hey, I did vocal at church, so what's the big deal? Well, because there was only like 5 of us in our class, 6 I think maximum. They were all girls. My music teacher made me sing low, and I already sang alto at church, so it was no big deal, but I was singing tenor and going down to some notes that were like crazy low. Crazy low. And we had fun with it though. If depending on how many girls were there that particular day, we may be singing higher or whatever, but we had fun singing some old Scottish songs and stuff like that because I went to a white school, so I sang what I was told to sing. The music teacher had opportunities. This particular music teacher that we had, both of our music teachers were actually into some had history of being involved with some really dynamic people. Like my music teacher, the male, he played like ragtime. He was a white man. He played like ragtime, and we'd be singing, tiptoe through the tulips, and he'd be like, ding-a-ding-a-ding, ding-a-ding, ding-a-ding. It would be like hilarious. Mr. Priestman, what are you doing? And it'd just be like, he was just in a whole nother dimension. But they would get notifications about things that were happening in the city. And he got a notification about an audition for a choir. And he thought that some of us would be interested in it. Well, nobody else in the class was interested, and I decided that I would go for this audition. And my boyfriend at the time told me what to do so that my voice would sound clear. And I actually did a podcast about this, but now I'm doing it face to face. I'm hoping that, like I said, I get through this. So he did this, told me what to do, what not to eat, and all that stuff. So I was before the audition, drinking tepid water, eating crackers, and all this stuff. And it was for a choir called the Toronto Mendelssohn Youth Choir. Now, if you look up this choir, this is a prestigious choir. Prestigious. And I went in and I thought, oh boy, I don't know how this is going to go. Well, they started me off, like at C or whatever. And I said, well, I normally sing low. And they were like, okay. Completely ignored me. And they just kept taking me up higher and higher. And I'd just be like, okay, I'm up at high C now. That's no big deal. They took me past high C. They took me past high E. They took me past high G. I was at high A, and I was just like, well, I've sung this at cantatas, so it's no big deal. Took me to high B, and they just kept going. And finally, they stopped me at high E. It was only recently, as I was thinking about my life and working out the fact that destinies had been exchanged, that I realized at that time I had the same vocal range of Mariah Carey. I had the same vocal range of Mariah Carey. So I came out of this audition like dumbfounded. Told my boyfriend when I went back to school, I told the music teacher it went well, They took me up to high E and blah, blah, blah. He's like, what? I'm just like, yes. So the results came back and they accepted me into the choir. And I had to tell my parents, of course. When I told my parents, they said they had to think about it. And then my father came back and told me that I was not allowed to be in the choir. I was going to get vocally trained for the amount that it would take for them to, or the amount that I would need for a uniform. The uniform, I think, was at the time like $200, and then we had to fundraise. I can't put into words now the devastation that I felt at that time. I was a teenager getting, ready to go into life, and this would have put me on a completely different path. And my parents, I knew who said no. And I went to school. I told my music teacher. My music teacher was like, let me speak to your father. And I said no. And at the same time, I was actually auditioning for my piano teacher's choir. And he had a choir, and he took me down, right? He knew the power of my voice. And he took me down, and I kept going down and down. And he was like, okay, so you'll be a tenor, alto. We already know this. So that's how I ended up knowing my range was 5 octaves. because I was going down in school to low C, low G, and even lower whenever necessary. And then they took me up to high E. So that's how I knew my range, because I actually had two auditions within like a 2 week period where I knew my vocal range. So it's only recently that I literally sat myself down, because I wouldn't think about these incidents. I wouldn't think about them. And it's only recently I really made myself think it through, that I had the range of Mariah Carey. So, my destiny wasn't stolen at that point in time. It was derailed. It was derailed. And then I married my ex husband. I will do another talk on the combination of him and my mother. And though he sang, this man was so jealous of any musical ability that I had. Any time we would try and sing together, he would say, I'm trying to show off. I am, I'm trying to usurp his authority and stuff like that, because he was a lot older than I was. And no matter what I tried, if I tried to go for music lessons, he would make it difficult. If I tried to go for voice lessons, he would make it difficult. Whatever steps I took to try and bring the music back into my life, he would make life difficult. We would go to music classes together, like theory. If we went to theory classes together, that was fine. He didn't have a problem with going to theory classes from now until the cows came home. I always came back with the highest scores, which drove him nuts. And I never studied it because I hated theory, but I had already done it in piano lessons. So I didn't need to really do, I didn't really need to do it again. But he hated it. That I always came back with good marks, even though I didn't study, and I hated theory. Oh my gosh, I hated theory. So any steps that he could take to prevent me from going forward, he put those blocks there. Derailed. 20 years is a very long time. 40 years is longer still. Life derailed. The destiny ship sailed. Guess who chose the wrong pill? Don't you waste another day. You cannot recover time. The years, they will creep without even a peep. You will no longer be in your prime. Empath, just take a tiny little step, and very soon you will find it's never too late. Adventure awaits. The biggest hurdle is in your mind.